Bitcoin right now is it's become obvious that you can't bundle everything onto one blockchain. You have to provide a way for users to opt in to decide what it is that they want to use, right? And so the way that Ethereum is doing this right now is with rollups, right? So you've got Optimism and Polygon and Starkware and a whole bunch of other systems that if you're not using one of those systems, you don't see the activity on those systems. You literally have to get like a special wallet, a special client, right, to interact with those systems, and then you start seeing the activity there. Ordinals is the same thing on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's been far more conservative. It's been far more strict about trying to reduce bundling to a minimum, right? So with ordinals, unless you have a special ordinals wallet, you don't see the ordinals, right? You can't interpret activity that's happening on Bitcoin as ordinal activity. There's a whole bunch of additional information that this is an analogy, but you basically haven't downloaded. And I think the exciting thing that's happening in Bitcoin right now is that there's a lot of excitement around building more tooling and building more standards which will allow people to issue tokens, mint tokens, create smart contracts or DeFi tooling, which is opt-in, right? Which isn't bundled in strictly with Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin and Ethereum are basically moving in the same direction, which is giving users much more choice about which use cases or which aspects that they want. But Ethereum started out with a much broader scope of, okay, everyone's going to download everything and see everything. And Bitcoin started out with a much stricter, okay, we're just going to really try and keep the block size small. We're going to try and bundle as little as possible. Now, there are people that, like Udi has mentioned, that are confused about this. And they think they're Bitcoiners, and therefore, because they're Bitcoin maximalists, what they say has weight, right? And they are confused. And I think this is actually a very small percentage of the population, and definitely not like technical Bitcoiners. But they got confused, right? They saw that Bitcoin wasn't bundling additional things. And so they decided that anything that wasn't bundled with Bitcoin was a scam or was wrong or was like some kind of religious attack on Bitcoin. I think that idea is going to die a quick death because it makes no sense. It's not logical. And really, the competition is between these two approaches of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Do we start out by bundling everything, which makes it easier to then build more tools and more standards that people can build more stuff on? Or do you start out more strict and force users to build up in terms of the kinds of standards that they're taking advantage of or using?
Yeah, one of the things I think I'd like to just touch on is the fee model, right? I mean, a lot of the open questions around Bitcoin is, hey, what happens when the emission, like what happens with a security budget once, because right now 90+% of all kind of fees in the system are block rewards. So how do you create a sustainable system after block emissions go to zero and fees represent a very small subset of
But Santiago, aren't we
incentivizing?
talking about 150 years down the road for that?
No, it's really, well, I mean, that's always been the default answer for people. It's like, oh, we'll figure it out. But when you
No,
think about it,
I
like,
actually, yeah, I fully agree with you
like
that it's nice to see that there are times when mining rewards are not the primary fee earner. But I'm just saying, there are a lot of people who misunderstand and think that's going to become an immediate problem.
it's not an immediate problem, right? Because you still have healthy, I think, block emissions. But like as everything, you discount back and say, well, at some point, it's not when they totally dry up. You have to then think about, okay, where are the fees going to come from? And I think that's when ordinals came around, I think that was the overwhelming kind of sentiment, at least in my estimation, was like, oh, wow, fees actually started to trickle up quite a bit because you saw this activity. And like, I just think it's sort of a paradigm, like a mindset shift, which is we're so used to thinking around this 21 million number and that scarcity drives value. But I think in the Ethereum camp and perhaps in other communities, it's sort of, no, utility drives value. And and I think that's a big difference in how we think about if your system, sure, Bitcoin can just be pure like a store of value. It could be a digital gold, and look, it's an $8-9 trillion market, massive, but you still need a security budget that is supported by fees, and so you have to. It's not really a trade-off in my mind. It's just the more you layer on tooling, as Yago was saying, to allow people to build on top of the network, to create kind of wallets and easy, like minting to mint ordinals and to have much more functionality, then fees become a pretty important and viable, I think, kind of you sort of fix the security budget that Bitcoin and Bitcoiners have sort of punted. And I think that's probably the most important shift that I've observed in the Bitcoin community since ordinals came around.
Simon, I want to ask you that same question, and I know you've had your hand up. Before I ask the question, I'll let you comment first. You've had your hand up for a while, and then I'll ask you the question.
Yeah, it's definitely so. In 2012, we were all talking about putting the whole stock market and everything on top of Bitcoin, and then obviously we had this scaling debate, and it was such a painful experience that we've all got PTSD and all sorts of stuff from that. But to me, the whole conversation of scarcity versus utility, for me, I think of it like I'm so grateful for what Bitcoin gave the world. And there's an element of just being grateful for what it is and not wanting to break anything, not wanting to mess with anything because it works.
But Simon, shouldn't Bitcoin be unbreakable?
Yeah, and that's where it becomes a bit of an ideological difference. So one is look at the amount of innovation that happens when you start to get these higher transaction fees. The only reason we ended up getting SegWit was because we pushed it to the limit. SegWit came in, and then the Lightning development started. It's been a slow burner, but it does actually perform and do what it's meant to do. It's just not got the level of adoption at the speed that people are used to. But where it gets really interesting to me is when you talk about the use case of Bitcoin. We're not sure if there's a market match for spending Bitcoin. That's true. I don't want to spend my Bitcoin because I believe it will go up at a higher rate than fiat currency over the long term. And so it doesn't make financial sense to spend your Bitcoin if you believe in that vision. But the ultimate to being able to lock up my Bitcoin is when I could do what everyone tried to do in 2022 that blew up everything because they went to centralized parties. But if I could stay on chain and I can borrow a stable coin against my Bitcoin, which has both tax benefits and financial benefits, and then you can buy a security and all stay native on the protocol or an NFT, that is what Ethereum demonstrated that people actually want to do. And if I can do that in Bitcoin, where I have more reliability on the underlying asset and its ability to make financial sense. But the fear of something like that being used as some kind of regulatory arbitrage, but I think it's a false narrative because you're right. Bitcoin should be pushed to the limit. Bitcoin should be tested to the limit. And the second all the fees start coming up, all the exchanges start integrating Lightning, and we start to push the innovation to its limits. So it's how it's the open-mindedness versus there's all sorts of things, and it's just a chaotic, decentralized argument that happens, and biases move in one direction. And but I think a lot of people would like to see more utility on it. And if we got what we got, it's a market. If the market wants to pay really high fees for things, then we have to figure out new ways of getting lower fees for things without breaking the underlying protocol and changing the reliability that Bitcoin will always be a commodity.
Can I just throw a question in here and say, is this discussion a futile discussion? Because anyway, regardless of what we think or you think or the laser eyes think, ultimately people are just going to do whatever they want to do with the protocol. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of wondering what the benefit of this argument is about, and these thousands of discussion that I've seen, because ultimately I guess people aren't going to listen to Twitter or to Udi or to Ran or to whoever it is, but they're going to do what they want to do with the protocol anyway.
No, of course
And
not.
that's the point, right? That's the
No,
point,
no, no.
though.
It's not the Simon. What do you mean? It's the point. Like Bitcoin is decentralized. We're meant to decide. All these protocols. We're meant to decide what use case is implemented. So I don't understand when we're having discussions and audience members are listening, understanding, and making a decision. This is exactly what needs to be. Like these are the discussions
But
that
that's what
lead
I'm saying,
to
Mario.
change in the ecosystem.
No, what I'm saying is the discussions that we have here don't really, ultimately people are going to build whatever they want on Bitcoin, right? And
Yeah,
whether or
but
not
they'll
we see
only
ordinals,
but Ryan, if we start convincing people that ordinals or Bitcoin is not a good ecosystem to build on, and the use case of ordinals shouldn't be applied on Bitcoin, Ethereum is a better solution, then builders will go like, all right, cool, let me stick to Ethereum. But if we're sitting here talking about ordinals being a great new addition to the ecosystem and it works well and creators should test on it, should build on it, there's a lot of projects doing well, then builders would move there. Like I don't understand your arguments, like why we're discussing it. We're helping
my
people
argument is
decide.
my argument is that it's a free market and it's a fully decentralized permissionless protocol where people should do whatever they want, and if there's a product market fit, customers will buy what they build.